The Constitution will not be saved in Washington. The Constitution will not be saved in Washington.
Travis Wayne Goodsell. From John 3:19. And this is the condemnation, that light is come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. Alright, so let's find the Book of Mormon one. Section 84. Let's see where to start. For whoso cometh not unto me is under the bondage of sin. Verse 51. And whoso receiveth not my voice is not acquainted with my voice. So it's important to hear him. And I condemn those who did a whole video series of hashtag hear him, and is not of me. And by this you may know the righteous from the wicked, that the whole world groaneth under sin and darkness even now, and your minds in times past have been darkened because of unbelief, and because you have treated lightly the things you have received. That's why it was under a different section, or a different verse. Which vanity and unbelief have brought the whole church under condemnation. They brought the whole church under condemnation. And this condemnation resteth upon the children of Zion, even all. And they shall remain under this condemnation until they repent and remember the new covenant, even the Book of Mormon, and the former commandments which I have given them, not only to say, but to do according to that which I have written. You can't just get up at the Rammy-umptums around the world and declare that the Book of Mormon is true and not act on the Book of Mormon being true. You have chosen to follow the living prophet rather than hold to the iron rod. And the following of the prophet has led to infection and death. Whereas if you held to the iron rod, you would have stayed home and stayed safe. This is why I've been warning for the past 4 years. This is why I've been telling you about the signs in the heavens. And so if you're wondering, shall we go over it again? I know last night you had an excuse. YouTube was hacked. Russia claims it was them. I have hackers and followers from Russia. who constantly remind me that they're there. And they gave me the signal yesterday that it was them that caused it. But again, the Book of Mormon let me know, because in 1 Nephi chapter 1 verse 4, they told me exactly what would happen. Because in the first year of the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah, that this is a coded warning for our day. How do I know this? Well, Lehi has a dream, and that dream is the sign of the Son of Man. He sees it in heaven in the first year of the reign of King Zedekiah. And who's King Zedekiah? He was the puppet king put on the throne of Jerusalem by Babylon. He was not a legitimately called king of Jerusalem. The original king was removed, and Babylon put on Zedekiah. In the first year, when the sign of the Son of Man came. So when did the sign of man come? When is this sign? It's an astronomical sign. It is a hard science data that we can identify through learning astronomy. It's a science. It is not astrology. I have someone else who's currently trying to communicate, and I'm specifically holding back on her comments because of her astrology-esque nature of some of her stuff. And there's other things that are causing me concern as well. Astrology is fake. Astronomy is real. There's a big difference. What's given right here in 1 Nephi chapter 1 is a date. A day and hour. Sorry, Matthew. And if you don't know what I mean by sorry, Matthew, in Matthew chapter 24, somebody put in, after Matthew was already given the date himself, the day and the hour. And yet somebody put in later, after the fact, an editor, a redactor, put in, no man knoweth the day or the hour. And so everybody goes around saying, oh, nobody knows the day or the hour, because Matthew said so, therefore we don't know. No. When you put an astronomy date, you now know the day and the hour. So don't give me that gaslighting nonsense to justify not caring of, or even bothering to look for when the signs will occur. They're here, they're now, and the Book of Mormon gave it to us. And the whole church is under condemnation because you all missed it. You were looking beyond the mark. You were looking for things that you couldn't understand. You were following the prophet, who was not called and appointed by God. Joseph Smith was murdered, and nobody followed Joseph Smith's orders for how to replace him. You ever wonder why it's a sustaining vote? I didn't vote for him. They've changed the definition purposely because they are not authorized. Nelson gets up and confesses he has no idea how to translate, has to go to actual Hebrew scholars, who then played him for a chump and gave him the wrong definition. The topic was perfect for him if he had only known the correct definition, which is given in the Torah. And he blew it because he's not a translator. He does not have the key of translation, which the president of the church, in the office of Moses, to gather the house of Israel, is supposed to have. He doesn't have it. And Mormons choose to follow him, who is a false prophet, rather than holding to the iron rod, which is the judgment by which to judge. And so this date, I've been telling you over and over and over again since before it occurred. My biggest video on my old channel, which the church had YouTube shut me down, 23rd September 2017, the first year of Trump's presidency, where he was put on the throne by Russia. And so yes, Mormons, you are under condemnation for voting for him then and voting for him now. You have gone contrary to the Book of Mormon. You have aided and abetted the enemy of America. The one they warned you about in the Book of Mormon. In Mosiah, it says, don't put a king on the throne. You can't get rid of him. He will start a war. Trump has replaced the Pentagon officials. He's ready for war. The Book of Mormon warned us of this. You are under condemnation. The Book of Mormon warned about a king right before the Christ comes. But you're thinking, oh, this Christ is going to come out of the sky on a white horse from outer space. You missed that John is talking about a sign in the heavens. And so you're expecting this Messiah to do everything for you, so that you don't have to do anything and lift a finger. And yet you lifted your finger to vote for Trump. You are under condemnation for defying and denying the Book of Mormon. They warned you. They warned you that 4 years that Trump would lose, but that he would try to start a war. The Book of Mormon warns that we could experience an entire destruction of our people, just as the Jaredites, just as the Nephites. They warned you, they gave you the signs, they gave you the dates, they gave you the fruit of what to look for. By their fruits ye shall know them, and you are under condemnation. So yes, I'm pissed. You're my people. And you blame me instead. Because you don't believe. You want to believe that the Book of Mormon is actual history. You want to believe that it just talks about Jesus, who's going to come out of the sky on a white horse. I have given you the warnings. I have tried to get you to believe in the Book of Mormon, and you would not care. You do not listen. You do not believe. That's why you are under condemnation. And you're going to ignore this video because you don't like it when things are negative. Wah. And so now you're going to side with Trump when Trump goes to war. You are going to be the bad guys, the kingmen, whom Captain Moroni went up against. Remember the whole title of liberty? Yeah, that was against the kingmen. And here Mormons are going to raise a title of liberty for the kingmen. Do you see how atrocious this is? Do you see how great and abominable this is? You are a shame on the history of this church. You are an embarrassment and a disgrace. You have all because you deny the Book of Mormon.